different exercises emphasize different parts of the force velocity spectrum. So coaches can select exercises and loads according to the needs of the sports and characteristics of the individual athletes.
Hi, Sei. It's my pleasure to have you on the Evidence Strong show. Please briefly introduce yourself.
Hello, Alex. Thank you for having me. So my name is Seiichiro Takei. Right now, I work at the Teikyo University in Tokyo, Japan, and as a researcher and strength and conditioning coach. But on the other hand, my background is in Olympic weightlifting, and I've been involved in this sport over almost 15 years
Wow.
as an athlete for the beginning and right now as a coach. So as an athlete, I was a member of the Japanese under 20 national team members and won Japan national title once. And right now I mainly coach weightlifting for college students while continuing my research. So my current research focuses on two main areas. So one is how we can improve explosive performance in athletes, especially using exercises like Olympic weightlifting. The other is how we can improve weightlifting performance itself. And today's study is about the former related to the first topic. Yes.
Awesome. So we will talk about squat jumps and hang cleans and hang clean pulls.
Mhm.
So why did you decide to research these three exercises?
Okay, so many coaches want to improve power, right? Because power is very important in sports performance, like sprinting, running, change of direction, so many type of performances. And many coaches use exercises such as jump squats, Olympic weightlifting, squats to develop explosive power in athletes. However, we still do not clearly understand how these exercises differ from mechanical perspective and hence what kind of power they can actually train. That's why we compared those three exercises. But maybe I should explain this before talking about the our study, which is the force velocity relationship
Yes.
and power. Yeah. Power is defined as force multiplied by velocity, and the force velocity relationship describes how much force we can produce at different movement speed. So in general, force and velocity have an inverse relationship, like downward hill type of shape. And this means that when movement velocity increases, the force we can produce decreases. This is a force velocity relationship. And a simple example is I always say this when explaining force velocity relationship, but it's about riding bicycle. So when you start riding bicycle, you can put so much force and your weight on the pedal, but movement speed is very low. But as the movement velocity increases, or especially when you are going to downhill, even if you try to put a lot of force on the pedal, you feel like you're just spinning it. So that means when movement speed is increases, you cannot produce so much forces. This is the one simple example of force velocity relationship. Another important point is that even if two movements like squat and Olympic weightlifting produce the same power, the combination of force and velocity can be different. Like 5 times 2 and 2 times 5 produce the same power, but the contributions of force and velocities are not the same. So from a training and coaching perspective, this means that simply using high power exercises is not enough. Good power training should develop both sides of this relationship, the force side and the velocity side. Therefore, coaches need to understand how different exercises emphasize different parts of the force velocity spectrum. So in this study, we compared three commonly used power exercises: the jump squat, hang clean, and hang clean pull. Hang clean is the catching derivatives of Olympic weightlifting, whereas hang clean pull is the pulling exercises. So we compared those three exercises to determine which part of the force velocity relationship weightlifting exercises actually target. This information we thought could help coaches choose exercises and loads more effectively when designing power training programs.
How you set up the exercise. So how the hang clean look like, the pull and the jump squat. So it's not the same as squat jump, isn't it?
No.
Okay,
So
so
the difference between those movements?
could you
Okay.
explain the how each
Yeah.
exercise was performed?
So the jump squat is easy to understand. Just bring the bar on your shoulders and stand still. And from that position, you just squat down and jump up. That's a jump squat. And on the other hand, hand clean is one of the Olympic weightlifting derivatives. So you grab the bar and stand tall. This is the beginning position. So bar is around your upper thigh when you're standing. And from that position, you lower the bar until about the knee height. And then once you get to that position, with the counter movement, you bring the bar up, mainly using the leg extension. And after you bring the bar up about your chest height, you catch the bar on your front side of your shoulders. That's the hand clean. Yeah. And one more exercise is the hand clean pull. It's almost same as the hand clean, but just without the catching movement. The movement of lifting the bar is exactly the same. You're standing straight with the bar around your upper thigh and bring the bar down to your knee height and then bring it back. And then with your leg extension, you bring the bar up around your chest height. But this time you don't catch the bar. Just bring it back to the start position. That's the clean pull.
What were the percentages? So you said the athletes had weight on the bar, how much, and what were the progressions?
So for the jump squats, before we talk about the exact numbers, we selected the widest range of loads that the athletes could perform correctly and safely for each exercises. This is the criteria for choosing the loads for each exercises. So for jump squats, we used the loads from body weight, meaning no weight, just the wooden, very light stick,
Okay.
to about 70% of back squat, one repetition maximum. We tried 80% of back squat, but most of them couldn't leave the ground. So 70% was the highest for the jump squat.
Okay, so before we go to clean and pull, could you tell us a little bit more about the machine you used for? Because when you say, oh, we use the weights from body weight, just body weight to 70% of back squat, 70% for a person who is well trained is still quite heavy. So although coming up may be of interest to researchers, we all also would worry about coming down
Mhm.
from the jump with 70% of back squat. So
Mhm.
how did you manage that?
So we actually used very unique machines to solve that problem. So for the jump squat, we used a machine called Lifter. It's manufactured in Austria. That says it was used to moderate the high impact at landing in jump squat. So this tool consists of movable safety arms positioned on both sides that support the bar and the cable suspended from the top that detects bar movement by attaching it to the bar end. Does it make sense?
Yeah, so you
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
lifter with a barbell, and the
Mhm.
barbell has a heater, a line attached
Yeah, it's
to the
connected to the
sensor.
cable from the top that detect the bar movement.
And when the lifter
Yes.
is jumping, the
Hmm.
safety arms lift up to manage the
Yes.
barbell. So when the
Hmm.
lifter starts to drop, the
Hmm.
barbell gets caught onto the safety arm. So the lifter is landing without the barbell. Barbell stays up.
Perfect explanation. Yes. That's why, when you're jumping, the bar goes up, you goes up, but also the same safety arms goes up and it just stays above your head. So when you're landing, you can just land with your body weight. That way you can do the heavy jump squat safely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great
Mhm.
machine.
Yeah, that is.
Okay, what happened in terms of weights with hang cleans and hang clean pulls?
Okay, so about the loads we use for the weightlifting exercises, the loads were based on the hand clean 1RM. We measured 1RM hand clean before the experiments. And we used 30 to 90% of hand clean 1RM for the hand clean. We, of course, we wanted to use the 100%, but some athletes can't do that in that experimental day. So we used the widest possible range, which was the 30 to 90% of hand clean. And for the hand clean pull, we used 30 to 110% of hand clean. Because for the clean pull, there is no catching movement. So we can use the lows above the 1 RM of catching movement.
Who did you invite to the study?
Okay, for the participants for the study, we recruited 10 competitive male weightlifters with like over 5 years of experiences. These are the athletes that I was coaching at the moment, and they were very well trained actually, with an average competitive experience over is 6.8 years actually. And their average back squat strength was about 2.5 times their body mass,
So would
which
you
is
say national level athletes?
national, and some of them went to like junior worlds,
Excellent.
and their hand clean was about 1.8 times their body mass, which I think are like really good numbers. Weightlifting exercise are kind of technically demanding, as you already experiences, and especially when using the heavy loads, the moving, correctly moving is very difficult. So that's why we used the competitive weightlifters for this purpose. Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Are we ready to discuss what have you measured?
Mhm. We measured the force, velocity, and power during the explosive phase, which is, when you're jumping during the jump squat, and second pull movement for the hand clean pull. Yes. So peak power is generated during those phases, and we measured the peak power of those movements. And from that, we measured force and velocity at peak power for each lift across a wide range of loads. We measured those force, velocity, and power, which allowed us to compare the force velocity characteristics of each exercises, and eventually to determine which portions of the lower body force velocity relationship each exercises can effectively target.
What have you found?
Okay, the main finding of the study was that weightlifting exercises such as hand clean, catching movement, and hand clean pulling movement mainly target the low to moderate velocity portion of the force velocity relationship. That's the main finding of our study. And the reasoning behind that is that at lighter lows, jump squats can produce higher force at a given velocity compared with the weightlifting movements. However, at moderate to heavy loads, the force produced during weightlifting exercises became on same, comparable to that jump squat. And let me explain why that happens from the movement characteristics of each exercises.
Mhm.
So for catching movements such as the hand clean, there is a limitation in the height that bar can travel because the athletes must catch the bar. So it's about your chest height. That's the limitation of the lifting height limit for the bar during the catching movement. So with the lightweight, if you try to pull the bar as much as possible with the lightweight, the bar goes above the height limit and you cannot just catch the ball, or maybe you hit your chin and injured. So that's why maybe some people are intentionally, but some people are unconsciously, they do the lifts with some maximal effort for the catching movement with lightweight. That's why catching movement cannot produce the comparable force to the jump squat. If you execute the catching movement very correctly, you pull the bar like just necessary height. That's it. And if you pull above that, you cannot execute the movement correctly.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why the catching movement cannot produce with light loads, and leading to that, catching movement cannot target the higher velocity portion of the force velocity relationship. And for the pulling movement, the height limit is a little higher than the catching movement. For the catching movement is about chest height, but for the pulling movement is right below your chin level. So height limit is, I don't know, 20 centimeter, 30 centimeter higher for the pulling movement. That's why you can produce a little more force with the lightweight in pulling movement compared to catching movement. But there is still the height limit for the pulling movement, right? For the jump squat, there's no height limit. You can just jump as high as possible. So that's why even with the pulling movement, you cannot, target the higher velocity portions that jump squat can target. That's the reasoning behind the difference between Olympic weightlifting and jump squat.
There's only one problem that coaches do not have the access to the amazing machine you had for the jump squats to catch the bar.
Yeah, that's right. So if you can use that excellent machines that moderate the landing force during the jump squats, if you can use that, maybe only if you take information from only this study, you can say that you don't need to do Olympic weightlifting in terms of the force velocity relationship because you can target very wide range of portion of force velocity profile but just by doing jump squat with wide range of loads. From the practical standpoint, you cannot use that, from moderate to heavy weight for the jump squat because that's just too dangerous. Yes. And on the other hand, for the weightlifting movements, you can use moderate to heavy loads very effectively and safely. For example, for the catching movement, you lift the heavy weight, heavy bar up to your chest height, about chest height, or maybe your stomach height, and then you catch it when the bar is just floating on the air. So when you receive the bar, still it's not too much force compared to jump squat. For jump squat, you land with your body weight and with the bar weight and just boom. That's put too much stress on your body.
Yeah.
So that's the benefits of doing Olympic weightlifting. Even without the that excellent machine for the jump squat, you can still use the moderate to heavy loads to target the force velocity relationship.
Could you explain a little bit more what is the difference between the catching derivative, so the hang clean and the pull in terms of the force velocity relationship? So if the coaches would like to choose, should I use hang clean or should I use hang clean pull? How should I decide?
I think in the real time, real world like training setting, I think both have values and each has its own advantage. So pulling derivatives such as clean pulls, as we talked about, have a practical advantage because they can be performed with the wider range of loads and leading to targeting the wider range of force velocity portions. Since there is no catching phase, athletes can use loads heavier than their clean one ran and still perform the movement explosively. So that's the advantage of using pulling movements. In terms of this, targeting force velocity spectrum, it seems like pulling derivatives always wins against the catching movement. But for me, catching derivatives also have a great advantage, which is a athlete's motivation. So in catching movements, success and failure are very obvious.
Yes.
If you success it, you can be very, fired up and yay. And if you fail, you're kind of depressed. Yeah, that's how it goes. And athletes are usually very motivated to generate maximal force so they can successfully catch the bar. On the other hand, pulling derivatives like clean pulls can sometimes be completed with submaximal effort because there is no clear success or failure point. Some athletes might be, lifting with just 80% of their, effort, and some athletes they put 100%, but we cannot exactly know if it's happening or not. Actually, there are many ways to solve this problem with the pulling movement, like using we right now we have like the machines that measure the velocity of the bar. So if we give them a feedback of velocity, maybe athletes might, put all their effort while they're doing pulling movements. If the athletes have like struggle to take the catching position with the restricted the elbow shoulder range of motions, they shouldn't do the catching movement. But if they don't have those problems, I usually recommend mixing both catching and pulling derivatives in the training. Pulls allow coaches to use a wider loading range and target a broader portion of the force velocity profile, while catching movement help ensure maximal intent of the athletes, which is very important for the training purpose.
If you would have to compress all your study to one message for coaches and athletes, what would it be?
So, from this study, the key message is that different exercises emphasize different parts of the force velocity spectrum. So, coaches can select exercises and loads according to the needs of the sports and characteristics of the individual athletes. Yeah, I think that's the key message from it. And can I a little bit talk about the using this concept to train competitive weightlifters?
Of course.
Because we've just got the one really good example of that recently. This study focused on the power development in athletes other than weightlifters. But I actually think, and we as a coach actually think that force velocity concept can be very useful for the competitive weightlifters as well. So, for example, we had this one athlete whose snatch had been same, like stagnated for over a year, and we checked his force velocity profile by letting then him to do a jump squat with different weights, and we found that he was relatively force oriented, and that made sense for us because he put so much effort on heavy lifts every day, heavy back squat, heavy deadlift, and he improved a lot of his strength, but he couldn't improve his snatch for a while. So, and he actually performed power snatches and power cleans with relatively lightweight, but as we talked, it's still not fast enough to target the higher velocity portion where jump squat can target. So we thought that maybe just adding those like very fast, high velocity movement into his training, maybe we can improve the force velocity with the whole force velocity relationship. So that's what we did. So we added faster movements such as counter movement jump with body weight, squat jumps with body weight, and repeated jumps, known as pogo jumps, into his training only twice a week or so, and only 10, 15 minutes per day. So that's not too much, but we just added a little amount of very fast movement training. And after a few months, he improved his snatch by about 5 kilos. So I know this is not only from the fast movement training, but I think it influenced and it helped improving his snatch by 5 kilos. And we checked his force velocity profile again, and we saw that his velocity capability had improved significantly. So his force velocity profile became a little bit velocity oriented compared to before. And from that, also, his force production at the velocity range of snatch around the middle of the force velocity profile also improved from improving the velocity portion of the force velocity profile. So this is just one example. Maybe he improved his technique, he improved his, other part of his performance. But I think applying force velocity concepts to weightlifting training also has a lot of potential. And I would love to do more research on that too.
I think it may be the case that if the lifter is deficient in one end or the other, and you test them and you get to notice this, that may be because weightlifting is both. You can't
Mhm,
be only very strong or only very
mhm,
fast. So you have to
right.
bring these two together and you have to balance them exactly with the technique you have at the moment, at the levels of your body and everything. So it has to be balanced in exact proportions for snatch and clean and jerk. So
Yeah, we still don't know what is the optimum slope
mm,
for weightlifters. Maybe it's different for each athletes. We still don't know. But for other sports like sprinting or jumping, they use force velocity profile recently for designing training, all training programs too. So maybe we can, take those informations and apply it to the for the training competitive weightlifters too. I'm still trying to figure out how we can do that. But I think it's another great way to train competitive weightlifters.
I think with adjusting training, as you mentioned before, the intent of the athlete may skew the exercise to be one or the other. Because the squats, if you perform the 75% or 80% squats faster
Mhm.
versus slower, you can affect where the score, the one particular set of exercise will be on
Right.
the velocity force spectrum?
Yeah, yeah.
Only by intent. So doing
Hmm.
the squat slowly or doing the squat fast.
Right.
And
Only
then
with
it
the
goes
same
per exercise.
exercise. Yeah, same exercise, same load with the different intent. The training adaptation will be different. So, yeah.
I have two short questions to
Mhm.
finish. First one is, what exercise is your favorite? Which lift?
My favorite lifts is, I would say, snatch because it ends so quick. You put all your skill and, force and effort into one split second. And if you make it perfectly, you don't feel any weight. It feels amazing. You know that feeling,
Yes.
right? So, yeah. But for clean and jerk, that kind of feeling happens, but still you need to struggle. So I don't
Yeah.
really like to struggle. So
Pain first, then you can enjoy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, snatch would be my favorite.
Understood. And
Yeah.
now, where people can find you on the internet if they want to follow your research or ask a question?
So I'm on ResearchGate, so you can find me with my name, Seiichiro Takei. People can find me on also some social media like X or Instagram with the my ID is Seiichiro224, Seiichiro 224. So I do not post very much, but I still on there, so you can contact me on there.
Excellent. Say, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.